How to travel internationally with kids without losing your mind. Robin, can you really fly halfway around the world with three kids and enjoy the trip?
You absolutely can. I've done it and we're getting ready to do it again in the spring. And I can't wait to tell you more about that.
So, you're going to have a lot of great tips and tricks for us to help people travel internationally with kids.
Absolutely. And we've got a kiddo who is on the autism spectrum and we make some accommodations. So I want to share some of that with the listeners as well.
That'll be great. Tell my listeners, why is traveling around the world with your kids so important for you?
Well, by trade, my husband and I are both in aviation, and he's a pilot for an airline, and I've done a lot of general aviation flying. And currently, I'm a stay at home mom. And so, through educating our own children from homeschooling as well as what we call world schooling, there's different types of things that you're learning along the way in every aspect. So when you're learning how to navigate a subway or a train system in a different country, that is a whole different level of education than just looking at a map in a social studies book or history book. And the type of education, that hands-on learning, is something that we have found to be absolutely instrumental, not only in living in the world, but also in navigating daily life. And we believe that that type of learning is something that is something that needs to be practiced. And when you do that on the go or in a different place, it's an absolutely perfect place to learn that skill.
Now, I got to be honest, I have three kids, and the furthest I ever traveled with them was from Philadelphia to Orlando to take them to Disney. So, my idea of world travel was taking them through Epcot. So, I'm really excited for today's episode. Today's episode, my expert guest, whose husband is a pilot, will share insider flight and lodging tips, packing and preparation strategies, how to handle kids, jet lag, time changes, and do it all with ease. So, for those of you who are new to the podcast, you're listening to Inspire Travels with Patti, and I'm Patti Hunt. I have traveled internationally without the kids and have lived full time in an RV for 3 years with my husband. I created this podcast to inspire you to live life to the fullest. And I believe travel is the best way to do that. And that could be in your own neighborhood or, like we're going to talk about today, around the world. Robin is a part-time RVer and a seasoned international traveler. She and her husband are both civilian pilots and fell in love with flying decades ago. Robin currently stays home with her kids and manages their online education, which provides flexibility for their family's dynamic schedule. Her husband, Chris, flies for an airline, and they enjoy traveling globally with their three kids whenever they have open seats. She is a writer and author of her most recently published children's book called Yucky Weather, which she published under the pen name B.G. Barnstormer. And we're going to talk about the book and your writing. Robin and I met at a campground 3 years ago, and we are now good friends. We mostly see each other on video calls and phone calls, but we are great friends. And I'm so grateful to have you on the podcast. Welcome, Robin, to Inspired Travels with Patti.
Thanks for having me, Patty. It's a joy to be here.
This has been a long time coming, so I'm excited to have you. Let's talk. We are going to talk today about international travel with kids, but let's get some background. You did travel in an RV with your three kids for how long? How long did you travel?
Yeah, we were on the road for about 3 years. And to launch in the RV, we actually weren't sure where we were going to live. My husband was based at Dulles Airport at the time, and we were homeschooling. And there, we knew we were there for 2 years. And so we said, okay, after 2 years, we'll figure out where we're going to go. And he got this crazy harebrained idea and said, well, what do you think about hitting the road? I said, I think I should probably see an RV before we make that decision. So we went to a local RV dealer, looked at them, and I was like, oh, okay, it's basically an apartment on wheels. It's got a stove, it's got some beds, sure, 6 to 12 months. Yeah, let's just figure this out. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and everybody has a memory of the pandemic these days. And we ended up being on the road, not just 6 to 12 months, but actually 3 years. We really found we enjoyed the lifestyle and fell in love with education on the go. And I know with your inspired travels with Patty, that is a big part of what we fell in love with. We fell in love with the education system of going to the national parks and seeing the actual battlefields and seeing the historic sites. And instead of just reading about them in a book, we were literally seeing them in real life. And living in DC for a while, it was fantastic because we got to see a lot of historic sites and places that people want to take a field trip to. And from that experience, that's one of the things that helped to launch us on the road.
It was something so out of your comfort zone. This was not, you even said, I need
Not
to
my
see
plan.
me because you had never even lived or
No,
been really in
no.
an RV.
I quote, when we first got married, I remember we lived in Kansas City and my husband's like, let's go to the RV show. I was like, why would anyone ever, and I quote, ever want to own one of these?
Wow.
And then about a decade later, whatever, we ended up buying one, living in one part full time for ended up being 3 years. And honestly, it was something that was not on my short list or my bucket list, but I absolutely fell in love with.
You know, when we talk about stepping outside our comfort zone, for me to travel internationally was stepping outside my comfort zone, just doing it with another adult. Today, we're going to talk about people stepping outside their comfort zone and taking their kids internationally.
And Patty, I've got a great story to share about that because it was like February, I think, of 2020 when we were prepping to launch. We were renovating our first RV and painting and getting it ready to go. And my husband had some time off from work. And so he goes, do you want to go to London for the weekend? And I'm like, I mean, are you kidding me? And from the time he called until the time we were packed and ready to go to the airport was like 4 or 6 hours. I mean, he called and I started packing, finding the passports, the kids, and the kids were 6, 8, and 10 at the time. And so you want to talk about stepping out of your comfort zone. We definitely have like 4 days, let's go to London. And I was like, okay, I guess if we're going to live in an RV, I'm going to have to figure this out. And so we did. And that was our very first trip internationally with the kids. We had an amazing weekend. And whether you've planned that trip for a long time or it's literally what we like to call on the fly type of trip, it can be a lot of fun.
That sounds fun and crazy. I don't know. When my kids were little, I don't know that I would have been able. I said I wouldn't be able to do that, but I think I would have pulled it together and done that. And what I want people to know is you with these three kids, you keep saying, I just figure it out. We just figure it out. It's not like you have some special skills. It's not like you're this magical mom. Well, I think you're a magical mom.
I'm not a magical unicorn, but I do have my own levels of magic.
But I think all moms are magical in their way. What I'm trying to really get across is if you could do it, anyone can. I know raising my kids, there were days where I just wanted to throw in the towel and give up. Obviously, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So we all have those struggles. Before we take this international, I do want to touch on the RV life because I have a lot of my listeners are RVers. They're thinking about it. Maybe this episode has them think a little more about RVing. And again, RVing could be weekends, part-time, sometime, full-time, the whole gamut. But if you're thinking about RVing, like you said, check out the shows, check out the RV camp, the RV dealerships, check out the different types of RVs. One of the things that I love, I have to mention, is Open Roads Fuel Card. Open Roads is a company that not only does diesel fuel discounts, they have a toll transponder that covers all tolls, just about every toll in all 48 states. It's amazing. And now they have roadside service and some other services that they are bringing on that is really important for people who are looking to RV. So I just wanted to, I'm looking to share things that could save money, time, aggravation, and Open Roads is certainly that company. Okay, let's go international. I'm going to say for most people, given that story, thinking about taking their kids international, I would think there's some planning that usually happens more than 4 or 6 hours before the trip, right? So for
Yeah.
most of us, we're
For
going
an
to
average family, airline families aside, normally you would plan, you would know what flight you're taking exactly. We fly standby as an airline family, and so we are a lot more flexible with what flights we take because we're looking for open seats, and that is a benefit for working for an airline. So if you're looking for a career, airlines are a really great career, and it doesn't have to be a pilot. It could be a flight attendant or anything else. they have great benefits in case, little plug for the airlines. But I think the planning piece, like for example, we're getting ready to take a trip to Egypt in the spring, and that we've already planned out our lodging, figuring out where we're going to go, figuring out where we're staying, and some transportation along the way. So there's usually a lot more planning that goes into our trips. But, the random occasional, hey, we have a couple days off. Where do you want to go? I'm like, I want to go take a nap. That's what I want to do. My husband loves to travel and go new places. And so, I get the kids and all the accessories, and especially for my kiddo who needs some extra accommodations with food, which I know we'll get into later.
Yes. So there is that pre-planning. Let's get into some of it. It's like you said, let's start with finding places. If somebody says, hey, I want to take my kids international, I think a lot of people have what we all call a bucket list, that list of places we'd love to go. How can we guide people to find those kid-friendly places and make that decision? Like,
The first thing that I always think about are what ages are the children? Depending on the airline, you have to buy them a seat or they may be sitting on your lap. If I can give the pro tip is buy them their own seat, because if you're taking an international trip, it's a really long time to hold your toddler. And also you're exhausted. And if your neck and shoulders and arms are exhausted before you even get to where you're going, that's going to be a very long, exhausting trip. But let's just say your kids, I always recommend ages 6 and up are a little easier to travel with, in my opinion. And the reason is, for the most part, they're potty trained. They probably don't need naps, and you can probably push bedtime a little bit. You're not going to bed quite so early. So let's just say, like, for example, if you're going to New York and you want to go to an evening show, or you want to take them out to a certain area of town, then you can see the lights at nighttime, or you can see that show. And, you might sleep in a little bit in the morning, but then that way you can actually push bedtime a little bit. Ages 6 and under, not that you can't do it. You absolutely can. It's just your experience and where you're going is different. So, for example, you might be going to a kids museum or a library or some type of science or educational type place, which are fantastic. Those are some of our favorite places to go, to those kids museums or science centers. And I remember we went to France a couple years ago with the kids, and I'm trying to remember, they were probably like maybe 8, 10, 12, something like that. And we went to this, I don't even exactly remember what type of museum it was, but I remember my daughter was looking at this pendulum that was swinging, and it was talking about time, and it was going, and she's like, that was so cool. And you just never know what your kids are going to be fascinated by. So my best advice is to say, no, not only what ages are the kids, do something for the kids, but also do something for you. Because there might be something, an art museum you go to, and they're like, I've never seen that before. And that can be a starting point for learning about different types of art or different types of history or something like that.
and I think that's great advice. And, knowing your kids and maybe sitting down with them and saying, hey, what are those things? If you haven't done a lot of travel, what are those things that would excite you? I took in the summer 2 of my grandkids that are 9 and 6. We only had a couple hours. We went to a local art place. It was this old historic type building, and they had all kinds of art. So I thought, okay, well, this could last anywhere from 2.5 seconds to an hour. You just don't know. And what was amazing was these kids, and my one grandson does have ADHD, so you don't. You know what? I'd say that with any kids, you just don't know what's going to happen when you go somewhere. I don't, it doesn't matter. So we get into this museum, and we go up to the counter to ask the woman, get information. And she said, feel free to walk around and, enjoy the exhibits. She pointed out certain things, and she looked at the kids very sweetly, and she said, we look with our eyes and not our
I
hands.
love that.
So just the way she said it was very, like I said, she was sweet.
Yeah.
But we're walking around, and the kids were so excited.
Wow.
I never would, that would not have been on my top 20 list of things to take the kids to do. But
Right.
they absolutely loved it. And my one grandson kept saying, is Starry Night picture here?
That's so fun.
To your point, also kind of gathering the kids together and saying, okay, what kinds of things do they like? What kinds of things might they do? My one grandson keeps saying, I keep telling him where I'm going. When I travel, I tell him where I'm going. And he said, he's 6. And he said, I want to go to Paris. And I said, why? And he said he went to go see the Eiffel Tower.
Of course, that was on
So
my list too, buddy. It's
yes,
beautiful.
yes. And
Yeah,
I've done that. And
yeah,
I would love nothing more than take this child to see
yes.
the Eiffel Tower.
Well, when you take them at nighttime because at nighttime, I don't know what they call it, but they have like a light thing and it sparkles. I don't remember. You'd have to look online if it's on the hour or half hour. I can't remember now. When we went with the kids, I didn't know that it like sparkled or whatever. And they had a light show, and we were actually on the Arch de Triomphe and watching this Eiffel Tower. It was like just a magical experience. And
Yeah.
I want to tag on that museum thing. I've got two things. The first is we went to Corning, New York, where they have, I believe it's called the Corning Museum, the Corningware Museum, where, like, those dishes, right? That museum, some people are like, oh, I was bored or I this, I that. We spent all day there. We learned about different types of glass. They had glass blowing demonstrations. My kids had never seen it. They could have watched every glass blowing demonstration all day. They were enamored. They went through the gift shop and they looked at all the different types of glass and the art and how it was made. And I'm telling you, I love that museum. In fact, I would go back in a heartbeat. And so, picking places to go with your kids, a lot of times you can do a quick Google search to say, things to do with kids in Paris or things to do with kids in London. And you're going to get a whole gamut of information. And basically, from that list, depending on the age of your kids, sometimes what really helps is to say, okay, there's a museum for art, there's a kids museum, there's a science museum. We always go to the science museum. Pro tip, if there is one, just go. They're usually fun and interactive, and you could spend a good half a day there. It's a blast. Or whatever else is on the list, and then you can kind of weed down. So usually what we do for our kids is we'll kind of get a pre-list of what options are. If there's an aquarium, often that's one for our kids that they really enjoy. And another thing that has been really interesting is like aquariums and zoos in different places often are very different.
And I think that the museums, and I was a science teacher, so science museums,
Sure.
the aquariums, those kinds of places kids really find interesting, and they're the common places we think of. And in
Right.
addition to that, when we came out of this art little art exhibit, we were walking on this nature path. They were picking up sticks, they were looking at trees,
Yeah.
they were looking at flowers. They love that too. So I think that if I have to add something here, one of the things with kids, we're always trying to do these things and absolutely plan those. But I think that just taking a walk, for
Yeah.
me, we went to the Eiffel Tower. I was absolutely blown away. You see pictures, you see video, but when you are there and you really see the massive size, you just that's not something you could really get a feel for. And just being there and walking around, and for people who like crepes, you stop at the stand and you get a crepe. I don't care for
Every
crepes.
crepe stand. No, okay. Maybe not everyone.
And not everyone. I
Crepe
don't care.
stand, for anybody who's not been to Paris, crepe stands can be as prevalent as hot dog stands in New York, or maybe, depending on the country, a coffee shop on the corner.
So let's talk about packing. What are some of the things? Obviously, there are the obvious things. People want to check the weather to make sure. I always make sure to have extra layers for the airplanes. Airplanes can get
Yeah.
cold. I'm stating some of the things that may be a little more obvious, but what are some of your suggestions for traveling through an airport? I know you have a great suggestion for that.
We like to carry on our luggage. And so that is one thing that we try to do every time we go, depending on where we're headed to. And so that is a little complicated. And one of the benefits of living in an RV for so long is we learn to live with less. And we really learn to pack for where we're going. So, part of the educational piece that we do, and I forgot to mention this earlier, is we look at the map for geography. Where are we going? Okay, now we're learning about what season is it there? What is the weather like there? Oftentimes, we're making sure to pack umbrellas. That's something that a lot of people forget depending on where they're going. And those are really like instrumental. In fact, we have 5 people in our family, and we usually pack 4 umbrellas. And they usually get used depending on where we're headed to, because it's raining in the afternoons. I mean, if you've been in Florida, you always know you have your umbrella, especially in the afternoons in the summertime or the springtime. And it's no different being in other places as well, making sure you have the gear for where you're going. So, for example, we went to Germany, I believe it was about a year ago, and we needed cold gear and we also needed not so cold gear. And so we actually got those, I don't know what they're called, like those suction bags where you like roll them up. I don't know if we got them on like Walmart or on Amazon, but you roll them up and you squish the air out. And so we had 5 people's worth of boots. What do you call them? Bibs, or those like pants, the snow pants, winter jackets, hats, mittens, gloves, all of the things. And I believe that trip I think we did pack one really big suitcase because we knew that there was literally no way that we were going to be able to get that in a carry on. And so we're like, okay, we're just going to pay for the check bag, right?
I want to go back for a minute because you said these bags, and maybe we could put a link. Neither of us are sponsors of it, but we'll put a link. Find it on Amazon. I know what you're talking about, but I also have the packing cubes that are a little different. Do you ever use those?
So packing cubes are fantastic. So when I'm packing for the kids, I usually take a laundry basket for each child and I say, okay, we have 5 days. Okay, let me back up for a second. Because usually when we go for a trip, our family usually is traveling for anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. We're getting ready to go to New Zealand and Australia. We have not packed yet. So this is good little mental prep for me. And we're going to be there for just over a month. And so we're packing for roughly 7-ish days, and then we're going to do laundry, and we plan for that. So we bring our laundry detergent, we have the packing cubes, we've got a bag. Little pro tip, actually, we have an IKEA bag. You know those ones that are like the blue bags when you go through IKEA? We actually have like a really big rainbow bag, and the kids know when they have the rainbow bag, that's the dirty clothes bag. So they know exactly where everything's going to go when we're traveling. And it folds up really small, and then that's a laundry bag. And then they know we usually eventually make a dirty suitcase once we've used enough clothes for the week. But that's a pro tip. So then we have the packing cubes, and what we do with the packing cubes is usually the kids are getting bigger now, so it's a little trickier. But usually I'll do like, socks and underwear for one kid in like a smaller cube. And so they know that's their cube for, after the shower or bath, they can grab what they need there. I'll also make sure to pack pajamas. We usually do pajamas. We don't do new jammies every night. We usually do one set of pajamas for the week because that's going to save you some room in the packing. We'll also pack pants and shorts for every person because you never know when the weather is going to change quickly. Now, we're going to Egypt in the spring. I'm not really sure what the weather is, but my assumption is it's probably not going to be super cold. So maybe we only need one pair of pants for that trip, but we might need some more shorts. And another thing is making sure we have like our travel. So let's just say we're leaving on a Monday. All right. So Monday all day is a travel day. So in our travel bag, we're going to have our first night of clothes ready to go. Because wherever we get to, we're going to be exhausted and ready to go. So I'm going to make sure our first cube is going to be jammies for everybody, toothpaste, and possibly like bathroom bag, that kind of stuff. So we'll pack a first day bag that's going to have those essentials. And then the other bags will have, okay, these are kid ones, pants and shorts and shirts or whatever, so that it's easier to locate each person's clothing. And that can be really helpful, especially if you have kids. Like we've got 2 boys, my older one and my younger one. Theo is now 15, so he pretty much takes up his own suitcase. But all of his clothes were hand-me-down to Walter, who is our 11-year-old. And I don't always remember whose shirts are what. And so it also helps to keep the clothing separate because when they're packed in separate cubes, I can say, oh yeah, this is Theo's and this is Walter's. It's a little easier with Theo because he's really tall now that his pants are longer.
That's a great tip. When we think about this idea of packing, that could be one of those things that are overwhelming. When I am packing, one of the things that I do is I start putting everything kind of out on the bed. Like I want all of these things. I
Right.
know I'm not going to take them all, but visually I could see each thing. I also look at, okay, Wednesday's a travel day, Sunday's a travel day. What's that outfit? So making sure the night before I have the outfit for that day, it's going to be all day. Even if I'm just, like I said, domestic travel.
Sure. Well, and I'm glad you brought that up because I neglected to mention. So when I'm packing with the kids, we're saying, hey, you need, 5 t-shirts, 5 shorts, whatever else, and put that all in the basket. And then we do our travel day clothes. And one thing I forgot to mention is the travel day outfit. So in my mental checklist of travel day stuff, you've got a jacket for each person on the airplane. If they're not wearing pants, we talk about, do you want to bring pants on the plane? Because sometimes it does get cold. So I like to do what I call head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Do you need a hat, sun hat, or cold hat? Shoulders, do you have your jacket or appropriate shirt? When we're flying for the airlines, we have actually a dress code we have to follow. And each airline has their own dress code. So you can't wear, for example, flip flops or midriffs or holey pants or whatever. Like each airline has its own specific. And so we're also making sure that we're following the dress code for our airline. And then, so you got head, shoulders, like jacket, and then knees, again, making sure whatever pants or shorts you're wearing are good. And then toes is shoes. I actually want to talk about shoes for a second, if you don't mind. If you are traveling with young children, be very careful with shoes. Make sure if you can, have closed-toed shoes. We have had a situation on an escalator where little toes got close to something, and thank goodness that they were wearing closed-toed shoes. The shoe was not okay. My child's foot was intact. And so just something that I think a lot of people are like, I'll just throw the flip-flops on. Crocs are great. We love traveling in Crocs. Those are fantastic. But I think especially for littler kids, just being aware, like little cute toes, like we're not always watching for everything, but there's tons of escalators everywhere you go. And so just being, safety Sally, I guess, making sure that people's little toes are safe on those transportation devices.
Great tips. A little bit more I want to cover because when you're traveling internationally with kids, can we quickly just go through important documents? What do we need? Whether I know there's a difference if you're traveling as a single parent with a kid. So can you share that?
Depending on where you're going, depends on like on a cruise ship. Sometimes they just do like a birth certificate is totally fine. You don't have to have the passport. Of course, always check the documents for whatever the cruise line or country requires. But usually we travel with our passports. That just makes it really easy. My oldest son, Theo, he and Chris went on a trip to Ireland, and we actually got on the website. I don't remember the name of the website, but basically like what document do you need to sign in case you're traveling solo with a kid? And it basically says, I, Robin, give Chris permission to take my son, Theo, out of the country during whatever dates, and I sign it. That may or may not be required, but it stops any questions or issues or middle of the night calls in case they're like, did you actually authorize your partner to take, the kid out of the country? That can be really helpful. So basic documents are sign something from your partner to make sure that they have permission to go, passport, possibly birth certificate, depending on where you're going.
And it's easy to get passports for kids.
Yeah.
I would imagine if you are looking to get a passport that you do it as soon as possible. There are times in our world of trying to get passports that it could take a long time. But again, I'm going to leave that to people to look into because I want to get through some of this. I have a whole list of questions.
I know. One other thing on passports to remember is, especially if you're going to Europe and some countries, if you're within 6 months of expiration, that might be problematic. So keep an eye on that passport date as well, because within 6 months, you likely will have some problems traveling in Europe.
The other thing that I want to talk about is how much advanced planning. So if you could cover that.
When we're going to different countries, they have different requirements to get in different, I'll call them clearances for lack of a better word here, different, paperwork. My husband was just working on our stuff for New Zealand and Australia the other day, and he had to submit different documents and information. We had to take our picture, and then we had to submit that in. They have to approve it. And so there are some different steps. And so it really depends on what country you're going to and whatever those time zones are, or let's say time zones, like you have to do it so far in advance. You can't just wait till the last minute to do those things. So just making sure that you've checked out whatever the country's requirements are and making sure that you've hit those, those paperwork and documents that have to be submitted.
I'm going to emphasize that huge, no matter what people have heard on this podcast, whatever they hear on YouTube or on social media, whatever you hear, don't go on social media and ask a question like, if I'm going to India, what do I need or what are the rules? No, go to their website.
Yeah, make sure you check that country. Yeah.
Yes. And I'm saying that because, you hear the stories of, well, I did this, that, or the other, thought I was doing. You don't want to get to the airport and realize that
you don't have the paperwork. Yeah, it's a yucky feeling.
Because there are visas and there are all kinds of things that you need in some countries with passports. So again, I'll get somebody on and we'll talk more about that. The big thing here is check the individual country, find out directly from that country what it is you need. Now, we're talking about international travels. I do want to share with people who are listening that are like, I want to travel, but international, I'm not ready for that yet. And I want to share about a company that I love, and that's Open Road Resorts. They have 7 locations, campgrounds across the country. this is a great way if you're thinking about traveling with your kids, but you're not quite ready to go international. A great way to do it, whether you have an RV, if you want to rent an RV, or you just want to get a cabin. They have tiny homes. Check them out at openroadresorts.com. For those people who are like, yeah, I'm really feeling like I want to travel, but not yet ready for international. So, like with my grandkids, I want to get them in the campground and see how it is to just travel with them before I take one of them to Paris to see the tower. Baby steps for some of us.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about travel day. Airports can be stressful, getting on the airplane. I'll be honest, the thing I'm thinking about when I when I'm traveling is snacks and food.
Right.
It's
It's it's
priority.
a it's a pro tip. I got some tips for that
Yes,
too.
yes. So
Well,
let's to give people tips on with kids.
yeah. So we have a kiddo who is actually on the autism spectrum, and her specialty, if you will, is actually food. She has a lot of food difficulties. So I actually spend a lot of time thinking and prepping food before a trip. And I'm thinking about not only snacks on the airplane, but also when we go to a place like we went to Japan a couple years ago. And on the airplane, there's literally pretty much nothing she would eat for a 12 whatever hour flight, however long the flight was. And every chicken had a sauce on it. The rolls were wheat rolls. I'm trying to even remember if they had any non-wheat rolls, because not only is texture, but also visual is part of the thing. And over the past several years, we've been discovering, because we didn't know she was on the autism spectrum until she was 11, and now she's 13. And so that was a big surprise and a big learning curve for us, because here you have us finally able to do more traveling, go see these places, and all of a sudden we have a child who not just really refuses to eat, but like has a lot of difficulties with food. And she wants to eat, but there's some other stuff. And so we've been through different rounds of food therapy, trying to learn and understand what is supportive. So just pro tips of snacks on the airplane, and then also for us, food when we get there, because depending on where we're going, we always want to have food that our daughter feels safe eating. So snacks for the airplane. I don't even know if Tupperware is even a thing, but I have these little snappy Tupperware containers that literally open, and they don't have a lid that detaches it all to it. It's all like one piece. And so in the airplane, the kids would always have their granola bar, their goldfish or pretzels. Trying to think what else we usually pack in there. Sometimes it'd be like fruit snacks, or like for our daughter Alice, we'll have a ring pop. That's a very sensory soothing thing that if you think about like a baby and a pacifier, how they're like sucking off something, that's actually very soothing for a child. And so we have literally from Amazon, we order strawberry ring pops in the big bag, and we put an entire bag in our suitcase, because we know travel is really stressful and that transition can be really hard. And so that's actually something that we use as a therapy tool. And the boys can have them too. It's just they know that that specific thing is something that Alice really needs and uses to regulate her body, which is fantastic. And most people, I just want to say this, autism is like ice cream. There's a lot of flavors. So just because you've met one autistic person doesn't mean that my daughter Alice presents the same way. And most people wouldn't know that she is on the spectrum until they start to see her struggle with food or have something different, because then some of the other regulation things are going to come out. And so for snacks on the airplane, she's got her granola bar, her snacks, her chips, her whatever she likes in her own little bag. And then she is ready to pull it out. Now, here's your pro tip, Patty. Are you ready? One of my neighbors, she taught me a long time ago that when you have an apple and you have it, you know those little things that you push down through an apple? I don't know what they're called,
Mhm.
apple cutters, cores, those things. So you push that down, you pull it up, and then you push that apple back together. So what happens is now you have a cut apple, and you can open it up and peel off the little pieces and then eat them. So what we do is we'll do that for an apple, or sometimes I'm just feeling lazy and I just like chop it in like quarters and put it back around the center. And then you put foil on it, and then you put it in your bag. That apple isn't going to brown because it's got its juices right there. And so the pro tip is it is a, healthy snack that you can have on the go. My kids love apples, so I can put 2 or 3 in the bag and they'll be fine. The only tick is if you're going internationally, you cannot take that fruit to another country. So only pack enough apples to be eaten on the airplane if you're going to an international country. Um, and that has actually saved us quite a bit, because a lot of times our daughter, she wants something crispy and like crunchy. And so she'll love to have like pretzels and an apple. That's usually a good snack for her. She does like to drink milk, but not all places have milk available. And so what I'll do is I'll actually pack a travel thermos, And if you've seen, lots of different brands, but you can get them really, really, really cold. Go, get the airport, buy a carton of milk at the airport, like at, the donut shop or whatever, and pour it in there. And that'll stay cold for, most of them are like 12 hours. And so
Mhm.
now she's got her protein, she's got her apple, her pretzels, her granola bar. She's going to get through several hours. We've been working on beef jerky. That's been a work in progress for a while, so we can have a little extra protein on some of those longer flights. And she is at the point now, thank you, Paris, France, where she will eat a baguette, French bread. And that has been a really big thing for her because that it took us, I think we were in France for 2 weeks before she decided she would eat it. Also, little pro tip if anybody else is struggling with the kid who has some sensory or food issues is Nutella is one of her favorite travel things. Now, TSA and Nutella, let's just talk about that. There's ounce limits. So we actually got a smaller container, put the Nutella in a smaller container, and now we have small containers of Nutella so she can dip her pretzels or her apple or whatever in the Nutella. And that's kind of a fun little snack. Now, if you don't mind, I want to talk real quick about food that I pack in the suitcase because that is something that's really big for us. So do we have time to talk about that?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
So
this is food you pack in the suitcase for when you get
when
there.
we get there,
And again, you have to be cautious, I would imagine, of
where you're
certain
going.
things you can and
Yeah.
can't bring into the
Yeah.
country.
So typically you can't take like beef jerky. That's what I was talking about. Beef jerky has been one like, can we do the meat stick? She can eat it on the airplane, but you can't take the meat into another country. And so when we're packing the suitcase, things that we usually pack are oats. And oats are something that you only need hot water to cook. And so we will pack oats and we'll also pack chocolate chips. And chocolate chips, little fun fact, don't seem to be so prevalent in other countries. We thought when we went to France that, oh, no problem, just pick up some chocolate chips. Apparently, that's a very American thing. They take chocolate and cut it in chunks and then put that in their cookies. So we take chocolate chips and we make sure, depending on where we're going with temperatures, we pack them inside of something so that they don't all melt and get gooey by the time we get there. So our breakfast usually will be oatmeal and chocolate chips. That's something that the kids really enjoy and we can pack. And then depending on how long we're gone for, and depending on the country, usually you can pick up oats wherever you're at. So that's usually less of an issue, but we'll have enough to get us through the first few days and then plenty of chocolate chips for the trip. Another thing that is a food safe for my daughter is a pancake mix. I have a homemade pancake mix. I have like just a protein powder that I add into it. And it's like a typical recipe. You've got like your flour and your baking powder, but it's something that is familiar to her. And that is usually what I like to call a slam dunk or a win meal. So that if she's like having a hard food day where she's just not feeling like she can eat a whole lot of other things, then I said, hey, you want to make pancakes for dinner? And then all I'm buying is the egg and milk to go into it. So that's usually pretty easy to find. So I'll pack 2 to 3, depending on how long we're going on our trip, 2 to 3, packages of my pancake mix so that she can have something that she really enjoys. So we've got oatmeal, we've got pancake mix, and then the other big thing that I usually pack is pasta. Now, pasta is easy to pack. So you could get like, a package of pasta or like angel hair pasta. Those are a couple of our favorites, like rotini or angel hair. And then that's something that we can replenish once we're going. So usually we pack enough for a few days of food, especially because she really likes garlic salt. When we were in France, we didn't realize they sell garlic powder. Garlic salt was really hard to find. And so now we also pack garlic salt. Now, pro tip, again, TSA, if you have a big container of something, they're not going to like it. They're going to stop you and they're going to have to test it. So we actually got a little Tic Tac container. And I think some of your listeners will really appreciate this pro tip. So if you have a kiddo or yourself who needs a special seasoning or a special something, a little Tic Tac container, you, of course, eat the Tic Tacs and then clean it out. And then you can open up, it's a little hard to open up the top, but once you open it up, then you can fill it with whatever seasoning that you enjoy. And for us, we keep a Tic Tac container of garlic salt in my purse. Now she has her own travel purse, so she has it with her. So she's starting to take on that responsibility of having what she needs for her. So she's got her ring pop, she's got her garlic salt, she's got her granola bar with her. And she's really able to independently, go to a restaurant now and mostly order the pasta. And if you're in Europe, you ask them to overcook the pasta. Please overcook it. I do not like al dente, please. And if you don't have a Google Translate app or something similar, I recommend downloading it because that will also help with translation because not everybody understands autism and food issues in other countries. And so sometimes they're like, what's the problem? And in France, we had the most wonderful server who was so patient. And you do not send food back in France, by the way. And so I told our server, I'm so sorry. My daughter has autism and trouble with food. Can you please give us overcooked pasta with this. And he seemed to understand and translate it to the chef that we were so grateful for the food. And please just give us plain buttered noodles or whatever. And he was very great. So hopefully some of your listeners out there will be encouraged with some of those food things.
And these are great tips. And I know we're talking about somebody who has food issues and autism. I think a lot of us, there are certain things food wise. I know if I start my morning and there isn't coffee, or I think I'm going to get my cappuccino at the airport and that doesn't happen, there could be a meltdown.
Or like food issues like gluten free or dairy free or whatever. There's a lot of people who have to accommodate and bring their food with them.
These are great things to know for kids. The other thing I wanted to share is I did an episode with a friend, a gentleman named Frank, whose son is autistic. He's 20 now. He has traveled with him extensively and gave a lot of great tips for traveling with somebody with special needs. And people want, I'll post that episode in the show notes, give you more information. But I think any of these suggestions could apply to any kid at any time, making sure they're comfortable, that they're warm, that they have their blankie, whatever that is. But I want to touch on a couple other things because there's something special you do when you're in an airport, because you are in an airport, 2 adults, 3 kids. Your kids are well behaved, but like any kid, sometimes they lose their minds, let's say.
There's a lot
So,
going on. There can be a lot of overstimulation for sure.
yes, yes, yes. So, what are some suggestions being in the airport environment, making sure to keep track of the kids, making sure, you definitely don't want to lose one.
Well, actually, I want to talk about that because we jokingly say that we've lost kids in sometimes more countries than we can count. And I say that, don't freak out. We found them always. But it's because our kids, as travelers, have a level of independence and they kind of know our like proximity. They're like, oh, hey, I'm going to be over here. And then I'm exhausted, sleepy brain. Oh my gosh, where did my kid go? Oh, they've just started wandering up the mountain there. Oh, okay, they're right there. So one of the pro tips that I actually have for travel as well is when they were little, we started traveling with them when they were 4, 6, and 8. And I was solo parent traveling with 3 children, ages 4, 6, and 8. And I actually went to, I think it was like Michael's or one of the stores, and I got bright orange t-shirts, like those bright orange traffic cones. And I actually got a shirt for each of the kids and me. And my husband didn't always travel with us because of his schedule and his job at the time. And so I also, when we fly standby, I'm not guaranteed to sit next to the children. And so if you can imagine, I'm depositing children throughout the airplane. And the flight attendant, I said, hey, the kids are all wearing the same orange shirt that I'm wearing. So if you need anything, please know, like I am in row 10 or 15 or the exit row or whatever. And the kids, they all have been coached for a long time on how to travel, what to do, all those types of things. And so airline families are just probably going to laugh because they're like, oh, girl, I get you. I've been there. Right? But
Going,
having
wow, not
right,
sitting with your kid.
having a
I'm thinking,
distinguished color and that matches you. So we have our orange shirts that are travel day shirts. Now that the kids are bigger, I don't have to actually worry about them wandering as much, especially when Walter was little. He's very curious and he's such a good boy. We talk a lot about Curious George. And it's okay to be curious, but it's not okay to be naughty and directly disobey and then just to go wherever. Like Curious George can be curious, but the point where curiosity ends and disobedience begins is the point where he doesn't listen to his daddy. So we need to understand the difference in curiosity and just doing whatever you want. So one time I was actually in Chicago and the kids again were 4, 6, and 8. And I had one of those, I call it my piggy pack, like the little carriers, like the backpack things that like I don't even remember the brand, but like baby wearers have, but then they wear their toddlers. So I had my piggy pack on. I always say like, you want a piggyback ride? And so we called it our piggy pack. And then I had a little umbrella stroller and then Theo was older. So he would have been 8 at the time. So, the little one's in the backpack, the middle one's in the stroller, and then Theo's next to me. And across the room, I see somebody coming up to me because of course I'm wearing my orange shirt and all the kids are in orange shirts. And it's actually my friend's husband, Mac, and he, in our aviation circles, he's a pilot as well. And so he's like, oh my gosh, I saw you across the room and there's this poor woman with 3 children in orange shirts. And then he said, I know that poor woman with 3 children in orange shirts. And so it was fantastic because he was based in Chicago at the time. And so I said, he's like, what do you need? And he was so fantastic. He's like, I was like, the kids need to eat. We have a flight leaving in whatever time. And I just got to get some food real quick. And he's like, this pizza place, you can order it or it's already made. We can grab it real quick, get you to whatever we had to go to because it was kind of a tight connection. And I just have to laugh because, had I not been wearing my orange shirts, my pilot friends, I always joke I meet everybody in Chicago. So every time I go through Chicago, I'm like, hey, are you guys there? But it goes to show that like if you need help, there's almost always somebody there that is willing to help with kids. They really want to help you because they know how hard it is to travel with children.
Well, you have some special accommodations, let's say, some special things that you get. There are people that are willing to help, and
Yeah,
sometimes parents are afraid to ask,
yeah,
but sometimes parents feel like they're being judged. Hey,
yeah,
but I think as a parent, let it go, do
yeah,
you, take your kids on the trip. If your kid is having a meltdown,
right,
you have to calm yourself first. We could do a whole episode on that.
right.
Getting yourself really mentally prepared
Yeah,
to be on this trip,
yeah,
dealing with kids, knowing that things are going to go wrong. And again, unfortunately, our time is running out, but I would love to, you know, that would be a whole thing to address. So what I'm going to do is have people reach out to you, reach out to
sure,
me with questions. Please share. And we're not quite finished yet. We still have some things to cover, but
sure.
please share give one way that people, is there like a website people could go and
Sure.
find everything about you? And then people will know that you're also on social media.
Sure, sure. I am easiest to find on my website, bgbarnstormer.com. That's bgbarnstormer.com. Also, social media at bgbarnstormer. I have both Instagram and Facebook, so you can reach out on a personal message or direct message there. And I want to share a story actually about losing Walter in Japan. Can I share that story real quick?
Are you sure you want to?
I am actually, because this is not only people are always afraid about losing their children. Okay. Yes, I get it. Totally understand. I accidentally misplaced Walter. Walter did not lose me. I misplaced Walter. Sweet, sweet Walter. So, poor Walter. So I thought my husband Chris was taking the children. I had to go to the bathroom and I was going to be a little bit. I said, "Yeah, I'll meet up with you." And a little bit later down, it was like an aquarium. And I went to the bathroom. I come out. I go to the jellyfish where I thought Walter might be, and no Walter. I'm like, oh my gosh, where's Walter? Where's Waldo? Where's Walter? It's not Walter's fault. It was totally my fault. But here's the deal. It's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to teach your children how to safely find somebody to help them. Okay. And that's the pro tip that I really want to leave the listeners with because it's not about doing everything perfect. It's about how to teach them how to find you if something happens. So here we are in Japan. I don't know where Walter is. I realize he's not with Chris. And he's like, he was with you at the bathroom. I was like, oh my gosh. He told me, oh, we were supposed to meet outside. And now I can't get back up because in Japan, everything's like a one-way street. You can't get back up the escalator. There's no back up. You come down the escalator and I couldn't get back up. And so he calls me. He actually had a cell phone. And so he calls me. He's like, Mom, where are you? I'm like, I'm at the bottom of the escalator. Well, the Japanese attendant would not let Walter come down. Of course, Walter doesn't speak Japanese and the attendant didn't speak English. And so I said, let me text you a picture. So I got on my Google Translate app and I said, my mom's at the bottom of the escalator. Can you please help me? And sure enough, I took a screenshot, texted it to Walter. He showed it to the person. So it showed Japanese and English. And then they come down, hello, and they were so kind. And Walter's like, you lost me. What was you? I'm like,
Wow.
I did. So pro tip, teach your children how to get lost and how to get found. Find a person who works there. Find an adult with kids. That adult with kids probably knows how to help a child find their person.
Right.
And my kids know because we've traveled enough. And being an RVer, you start to learn who you can talk to. It's not about doing things perfect. It's about figuring out how to figure out the problem. So we're in a foreign country, don't speak the language, uh, not my best mom moment.
Right. Right. When you are sharing it,
Yeah. Yeah.
world, thank you for being vulnerable.
Right.
We've all made mistakes, and that has to be one of the scariest for you
Yeah.
and Walter.
Yeah.
That is scary. And I would imagine that making sure all of your kids have, their name, a phone number, like they're identifying information, but it shouldn't be necessarily on them. Like, you don't want their
So, yeah, my
name.
kids all know my name and phone number. They know my first name, they know my last name. That's something that actually we taught them very young because I did travel with them, like I said, when they were 4, 6, and 8 solo. And so they knew my name is Robin and they knew my phone number and they knew how to find an adult in charge, somebody who works there, somebody. Yeah, I could tell you, Patty, story after story about how life happens on a cruise ship. And my daughter found somebody says, I can't find my mom. And so, of course, then my name is getting called. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like the worst person ever. But the reality is, here's the deal. You could think, oh my gosh, how incompetent of a mom. Okay, yes, you can think that, but here's the deal. Everything is a learning opportunity. And what happened that day is my daughter, we had moved chairs and she didn't see us. And so she was like, I know how to handle this. I'm going to find somebody. They're going to find my mom. I'm not worried about it. And she handled it. And what was so cool, which could be so embarrassing to some people, is the fact that, oh my gosh, you lost your kid. Yeah, well, I also taught them how to find me in case I turn or something happens. I mean, I could have been dealing with an emergency with another child, and that could happen to any mom of multiple children. And so, if you're a parent out there who has multiple kids who is just feeling shame or frustration or, oh my gosh, I can't do anything right, I promise you, you're probably doing better than you realize. And I want to be very encouraging to say, you are not alone. Who loses their kid on a cruise ship? At least I know they're on the ship, right? Like,
Right, exactly. I have 3 kids that I've raised. Dan and I together had 5 kids together, 9 grandkids, and I realized, probably, I wish I had realized sooner, that nobody's getting out of parenthood without really screwing some things up. Like, focus on the things you do well, learn from some mistakes, try and minimize those mistakes, but you are not getting out of parenthood without screwing things up. And again, thank you for being honorable,
yes,
because
they're learning opportunities. And sometimes you learn the hard way in a foreign country where you don't speak the language and you just got to fail forward.
yes, we do have to wrap up this episode with lots of questions maybe still remaining. So, again, I want to encourage listeners to reach out to you, reach out to me. I am on Instagram and Facebook. I am on TikTok. I say that because I'm not quite there yet. Reach out. We want to hear your questions, your comments, your thoughts. Say, hey, yeah, worst mom ever, because we could all, I could certainly tell my stories too. I
Yeah.
once left my daughter in a nursing home where my dad was. We
Everybody's
all
got a
love
story,
Devil
Patty.
Devil.
Everybody has got a story. And we do joke in our house. It's not about how many times or how many countries you've lost your kid in. It's about how many times you repair after the situation. It's not a fault. It's like a learning opportunity to say, hey, this is what happened. How can we do better next time? And, there's that.
And we definitely want to minimize that. I'm
Right,
not
right. Minimize the risk
encouraging
if possible.
anybody
Yeah.
to not leave your kids somewhere.
No, don't
And
leave your
again,
kids.
you've
Don't do
me
it.
so much.
Learn from a mistake. Try to remember where you're at with your children.
Right. But just as a quick recap before we wind down, a lot of great tips on traveling with kids. The first thing is embrace the idea of travel. So whether that is starting domestically, starting in your own neighborhood, go on the hike, go explore the little art show that you didn't think your kids would like. Go with the idea that you might be there for 2.5 seconds or 2 hours. You just don't know. Get out and expose the kids. As far as flying internationally, it can be done. Really embracing what it is you're looking to do, what the kids want to do, choose the place you want to go. You gave a lot of great packing tips, a lot of great suggestions for preparing your kids for travel. So thank you so much, Robin, for all the amazing information you provided today. And I am sure there's more information that can be shared on this. But again, thank you. You can reach out to Robin at bgbarnstormer.com and on social media. I will post that in the show notes. I want to leave you with this one last thought. And for me, travel is not just about where you go, but how you live. And I want to remind you to live life fully every day.